When you're in the lunge animation, your character has to get inside of the survivor's hitbox in order for the hit to connect. So if you lunge through a pallet, the survivor is going to have ample time to react to your swing and catch it with the stun in the middle of the lunge animation. The trick here is to not lunge and rather just click your M1 button and hold W. Your hitbox is for some reason larger at the end of your lunge. So if the survivor is camping the pallet, your hitbox is large enough to hit the survivor on the other side of the pallet. This also works if you're lunging from far away and then you finish your lunge as soon as you get inside of the pallet range. So as long as you finish your lunge before it's fully completed, you are short swinging. But the easiest way to do it is to just click your mouse button without lunging at all. Killer movements in DBD is pretty simple, but there's a small little detail that not a lot of people know about. When you're moving towards a certain direction, your character builds momentum, meaning that when you just start moving, your character is not yet moving at full speed. It takes a few seconds for your character to accelerate to your normal speed. And when you decide to change directions, let's say you're moving to the left and then you decide to move to the right, your character loses all the momentum it was building while moving to the left to then reset and start the momentum again moving to the right. And this can be problematic when you're trying to 50-50 a pallet, for example. It gives the survivor much more time to react to what you're doing and see that you're changing directions. However, for some odd reason, your momentum will not reset if you change directions while you're right up against an object. And the info on this is kind of confusing, so to keep it less convoluted and easier to digest, just know that whenever you're mind gaming, move away from the loop, and when you decide to change directions, touch the object and then use the other key. This is a good way to preserve your momentum, and it's going to make it a lot easier to get hits on tiles, on top of being a decent mind game in and of itself. And since we're on the topic of mind games, a lot of people see mind games as just a way to be confusing. Like look to one side, double back again. But if your mind games are just frantic movements that you're not thinking about, you're confusing both you and the survivor at the same time. And it ends up just being a 50-50. And a lot of the times, if you're not paying attention to what you're doing and you're not thinking of what you're going for, you might actually win a mind game, but because you're not paying attention, you don't even take advantage of it. Mind gaming should be mindful. You should be thinking of what you're trying to accomplish with the movement that you're making and pay enough attention to take advantage of it when you do win it. Now, end-game saves as survivor. Ever since hook grabs were removed, as long as there are 2 healthy survivors and 1 survivor on the hook, against most killers in the game, you should always attempt to save. Here's how it goes. First of all, open your exit gates. Do not 99 gates, ever. Just listen to me. The save is going to start with 1 survivor on one side of the hook and another survivor on the other side of the hook. One of the 2 survivors goes in and attempts to unhook. The logical reaction from the killer is to hit the person unhooking. When that person gets hit, they immediately run away to the exit gate. While the killer is in the blade wipe animation, the other healthy survivor goes in and fully unhooks. You have time to do that. And then the killer is either going to hit the healthy survivor or stalk the survivor that just got unhooked. If he chooses to hit the healthy survivor, he just immediately runs to the gate and lets the base gate BT do the job on the unhooked survivor. If the killer chooses to stalk the unhooked survivor instead of hitting the healthy survivor can then go for a body block. Either way, endgame saves are heavily survivor sided, meaning that if you know what you're doing and if you learned anything from what I just told you, they should be extremely free. Something I want to teach you is a little bit of something called game sense. Basically, when you gather enough information with what the game gives you to make safe bets on what's happening around you and where survivors are, for example. This is my best attempt at teaching killer macro. It's a very complicated thing to explain, but I have a very realistic scenario here for you guys that was not done in a custom game at all. In this scenario, I'm being chased by a pig, and in the pig's POV, you can see that a sable ward was running, injured, to the back of the main house in Haddonfield. After the pig wins the chase, she notices in the HUD that she got healed and Alan Wake also got healed. In this scenario, it's safe to assume that both Sable and Alan Wake are behind the house, because in the time that you were in chase, they were probably healing. So now you know where 2 other survivors are, and all of that without any perks. Something else on the survivor side that actually happened in that same situation is that instead of Sable fully healing Alan Wake and then waiting for Alan Wake to heal her, the Sable healed Alan Wake up to 99% and then waited for Alan Wake to heal her all the way up to then finish Alan Wake's full heal. The reason they did that is to not give the killer information before they finished healing, because if the Sable finished the heal on Alan Wake, the killer would immediately know that they're healing, and if the killer has good game sense, he would know that they're behind the house and he could actually interrupt the heal. There are a lot of survivor techs and a lot of techs worth knowing, but if I had to pick one to make literally every single of my solo queue teammates learn, it would be the heal tech. To understand the heal tech, you have to understand a few fundamental mechanics of Dead by Daylight. First of them being that DBD is a very very poorly coded game. So when there's a survivor on the floor and there's anything happening to them, if there's anyone interacting with them, in this example healing, the killer is unable to pick them up no matter how hard they try. The only thing the killer can do is hit the person that's healing the person on the floor. Because every time the killer hits someone, he has to go through the animation, the survivor on the floor can crawl until the animation is finished. The heal tech works off of that. Let's say a survivor dies very close to the exit gate, but not quite. If you don't do anything, he's gonna get picked up and die. What you should do, and it requires a little bit of coordination, is start healing the survivor on the floor. Then the killer is gonna be forced to hit you, and when the killer hits you, he's gonna wipe his blade, and in that time, the survivor is gonna be crawling. Then another survivor comes in and starts healing the survivor on the floor again. The killer again is going to have to hit them, and while the killer is going through the animation, the survivor is crawling. Another mechanic you have to understand is that in Dead by Daylight, when the killer downs you, you're going to make an animation, a dying animation. And while you're in that animation, your character is locked. You can't move them until the animation is finished. But that dying animation can be negated by many actions in the game, like doing a generator, pointing, waving, or even healing. So even when you're injured, you can still help with the heal tech, because since you're not going through the animation of dying, you can immediately start crawling. So in this case, I start healing the survivor on the floor again. The killer downs me, goes through the animation. Now I'm also crawling. And then the killer tries to pick up. Sable starts healing the other survivor, dies for that survivor, and crawls away, and everyone escapes. Game sense on survivor is a little easier. Something that I think is important to teach you guys is the unhook order. Like whenever a survivor is on the hook, who should be going for the unhook? With the HUD changes for survivor, this becomes a lot easier. In this situation, for example, there's one person on the hook, my teammate is injured and doing a gen. You can look at his two conditions as like a -1 point towards being the person that goes for the save. Being injured is a big downside, so you're probably not going to be the one going for the save if you're injured. Being on a gen is a -1 point as well, because you're already doing something, and if there's someone else that's not doing anything, that person should be going for the save. So in this case, the survivor has double privilege, so I have to be the one going for the save. It's a pretty easy, self-explanatory thing, but I feel like a lot of people still don't understand that. Look at the HUD and make informed decisions based on it. Also, always remember to take the killer as far away from the objectives as you can. It will happen that you're going to run a killer towards the generator that your teammates are doing sometimes, but if you can't avoid it, do so. Camping, tunneling, and slugging are the three best ways to destroy casual, unexperienced survivors, to a point where it became frowned upon to do these things because of just how hard they destroy survivors that are uncoordinated. But at the same time, they're the easiest way to lose if you do them incorrectly against good players. Tunneling the wrong survivor can end up in a 5-gen chase, and then you just lost the whole game because of that. There are so many anti-tunnel perks in the game that can counter you as well, and if you're not playing a particularly strong killer, it's probably not even smart. Remember that if you're only after one survivor, that means that there are 3 survivors that are just completely free to do generators. Camping is also easily punished by survivors just recognizing that you're proxy camping the hook and doing generators instead. You have to wait 2 whole minutes for a survivor to down the hook, and if you're not an insta-down killer, someone can just trade the last second and then you got nothing. And slugging is pretty easy to counter. It doesn't progress the game. If the survivors are smart enough, you will just lose with 0 hook stages. Doing these things efficiently, however, are the best ways to win games. I still wouldn't recommend it because it teaches you bad habits. It teaches you how to destroy bad players, and then when you get to the good players, you're just going to get destroyed yourself. The biggest takeaway from this video should be learn how to lose first, improve at the game, gather the actual skills that you need to beat good players, and then camp, slug, tunnel. Tunneling is smart whenever you get to a position where you know for a fact the survivor doesn't have an anti-tunnel perk, you're playing a strong killer and you can down them fast, or you recognize that the survivor that just got unhooked is running to a very weak side of the map. Tunneling first hook is almost never the best play, but tunnel is almost always the best play when you already have map-wide pressure, if you have a bunch of people injured or more than one hook. Camping is the most efficient when you get a hook close to 2 or more generators that have progress, because then you're camping 2 objectives at once. That's extremely efficient. And slugging is only efficient if you're playing high S tier killers and you know you can chain downs before the survivors can even react to it. And I think the biggest tempo move in DBD is getting a hook and then getting another down before they get the unhook, slugging the second down that you got, and then running back to the hook. This way, all 4 survivors are off the generator. And the way you counter tunneling is by either completely completely ignoring the survivor that's being tunneled, or efficiently body blocking. Body blocking is a skill in and of itself, and it's something that you gotta learn how to do efficiently in order for it to even do anything. A lot of the times, if you try to body block at the wrong spot, you're just wasting a health state. There's always the chance that you're just gonna make the chase harder for the survivor. I have multiple clips of my viewers in open lobbies trying to help me by body blocking, and they end up killing me because of it. So I would say the best way to counter tunneling is to tunnel the generators. The best way to counter slugging is to have comms. There's not much you can do. If you're playing against the slugging spirits, just go next. It's all good. And the best way to counter camping by far is to ignore the facts that the killer is camping. Just blast the generators out and trade hooks whenever they're like nearing the second stage or nearing death on the hook. A lot of people panic when they see generators pop left and right, but they never stop to think about the facts that the more generators that are available for survivors to do, the bigger the map effectively becomes, because there are more places where the survivors want to be at. And the more those generators get completed, the smaller the map becomes, because there are fewer spots on the map that you have to patrol. And that ties into my other point, which is learning how to control 3-gens. And I'm not talking about holding 3-gens forever. I'm just talking about being able to bring back a lost game by controlling a small area of the map and never letting the survivors complete the last gen. In the game that you guys are watching in the background, I recognized my 3-gen, which was a very egregious one. You shouldn't expect all your 3-gens to look like this. This one shouldn't even exist in the game because of how strong it is. But I started it at 3 hooks, and I pretty much spent the whole game only on that side of the map, and I ended up getting the 4K. Now, this is a boring way to play the game, and a lot of the killers are not very good at holding 3-gens in general. My point with all of this is to explain that just because generators are popping, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily losing the game. It doesn't matter if you get the 4K at 0 gens or at 5 gens. Don't let the gen pop sounds scare you. The game is very much winnable at 1 or even 0 gens, depending on how you play the end game. Understanding which pallets you should respect and which pallets you should always disrespect is very important, especially if you play weaker killers. The way you should look at pallets and whether you should or should not respect them is think about the pallet and think how much that pallet stun will cost you. Let's start with the strong pallet. Let's start with the shack pallet. If the survivor stuns you with the pallet, you're gonna have to break it anyway. Even if you respect it, you're gonna have to kick it. There's no mind game. There's no other option other than kicking that pallet. If you even attempt to mind game, you are throwing the game. And if you respect that pallet, and the survivor actually greets it and goes for the window, there's a chance that that chase gets increased by like 30 seconds. So realistically, the only price you're paying for getting stunned by that pallet is the stun duration. Now let's think of a weaker pallet. Let's think of a car filler, for example. If you get stunned by this pallet, the survivor might actually be able to make another towel because of the stun duration. And if you respect the pallet, there's a huge chance you can just mind game it instead of kicking it. So the price you pay for getting stunned by that pallet is the survivor might actually make it to another towel completely. Whereas if you respect the pallet, the survivor is stuck in there and his only safety net is now out of the way. So you should pretty much never respect the strong pallets like jungle gyms, shack, guard pallets. You always walk through them, because if the survivor even attempts to greet them at the wrong time, you get a hit for free on a very strong towel. And you should be a lot more careful around the weaker pallets, especially the weaker the pallet is, the more respectful you have to be, because if you get stunned by a weak pallet, you might actually increase the chase by infinite amount of time depending on if the survivor can make another towel or not. Zoning is a much simpler concept to understand. Just understanding that you don't want the survivors to make other pallets and windows is already enough. Applying it in game is kind of more complicated though, because your brain has to be activated at all times. Basically, in this example, if I were to kick the pallet from this side, the survivor would have access to pretty much the entire rest of the map. But if I were to kick the same pallet from the other side, the survivor would have a nothing. A big nothing. And remember that as killer, you choose where the chase is going to go to. So just having the knowledge of these little things is going to change your entire experience with the role.
Woof.